Welcome, everyone. My name's Stephen Warren. I'm the CTO of Data Center Dynamics, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us on this management and operations channel where we're really looking at this fireside chat of dollars from data, how to turn your operations from a cost center to a profit center. And that's something that we've been dealing with all along in this industry. And we all know it, the amount of data is just getting incredibly large. How do we deal with it? And it remains very much underutilized and simply not used the right way if it is. But it remains a huge opportunity for all of us. And I think this is really important where we've got two of the most wonderful subject matter experts joining us. Dan Moore, Senior Director of Business Operations at CyrusOne, a global wonderful player in this industry who has helped so much in educating us. And also we've got Stuart Chambers, the Director of Strategic Services at MCIM, which is a fulcrum company. Please know that. And I would like to say, from all of us at DCD and the entire community, thank you so much to MCIM and Fulcrum for actually sponsoring this. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys right away. And the first question that comes up, of course, is how do you turn operations into a profit center? You guys even said it when we were chatting before. You're dealing with so much data these days. How do you even deal with it? I mean, structured data, unstructured data, and I heard someone say quicksand data. So with that, Dan, can I please turn it to you first, sir? From the CyrusOne perspective, and you've had a lot of experience. How do you do this? What's your perspective? What is your perspective on it? Because it's extremely complicated, sir. To you, Dan.
It is, and good morning, Stephen, and thank you for the opportunity to join this panel and this conversation, as it's extremely appropriate at the time of where we are within the industry and how we move forward with this explosion of data that we have at our fingertips. So. Operations was historically thought of as just folks that did tasks and walked around buildings, right? That has evolved. It's had to evolve, right? We've had to get smarter. We've had to get enhanced training and skills, and we've had to really put our customer at the core focus, as we always have, but even more so today when we look at what can we do with this data to help our customers in our environments be smarter and allow them to operate more effectively and with safeguards and parameters around what they're doing. So really that's one of the key things that I like to cover today is just that.
So Dan, I've got to ask you, you've got a tremendous number of customers globally, the biggest to the most critical. Is this something that you're hearing from your customers also, Dan?
Yeah, it is something that, they're very interested in the data. And a lot of it is, I know we're gonna touch on SLAs and transparency. But again, even talking about SLAs, right? They're legal parameters that are put in place, and we used to provide them to prove that we didn't violate something, right? What T&H or access, et cetera. But really, what's really evolved to is more of a transparent partnership of data flow. And we want to make sure they have the data that they need to make their decisions, as well as being transparent with them about operational parameters within their environment. So the data requests are tremendous. They also just used to be this stagnant Excel reports, and just here you go, and here's a little T&H temperature humidity chart, and see, we didn't do anything wrong in this time. Right now it's evolved, right? We want to be more engaged with them and explain operational things, situations, and help them understand what's going on in their environments.
Stuart, I don't even know how to begin where Dan left off. You got to be smarter. You got to be more transparent. I mean, he hit it all. To you, Stuart, what are your thoughts on this in terms of what needs to be changed? How are people reacting to this? Do we even understand it? Is there some idea that we're just doing it wrong?
So you are exactly right, Stephen. Dan is a hard man to follow. But first, thank you for letting us sponsor this conversation, because it's a real one. To your earlier point, I think you could ask any operator on the deck plate, and they've been drowning in data in these data centers for the past 2 decades, right? From ops manuals to maintenance procedures to customer escalations. That's what they deal with every day. So to all of Dan's points, right, and to the broader question of how do you turn an operation center into a profit center, it is going to revolve around the data, right? And you have to be able to bridle this. And that's why I like talking with Dan, right? Because Dan gets down to very specific techniques, and he already hit on some of them, right? And I want to unpack them here. And you can't get away. I always call them the big three. And the first of those is automating the workflow process or the business process, right? And as Dan just said, right, you have to be transparent with these customers. They need to see the information to build trust, but there is a time component to that. If they get it late, it doesn't mean as much, right? So you have to be able, as one of these first tenets, to automate the transmission of the data within your business process. And Dan, I'm sure you could tell me that's not easy to do when you've got a million different customers screaming at you from all angles that I need it. So that's at least the first one. Stephen is right. You've got to automate the business process, right, around your data, and that's going to be key to turning it into a profit center.
So, Stuart, I want to follow. Go.
Yeah, Stuart hit it on, right? So it really does come down to how do we get that data? Listen, data is everywhere. How do we harness it? What is the appropriate data? We're going to get into all that and try to really navigate through that because it's a vast sea of complexities if you let it be. So yeah, just again, automating things. And I know it's kind of not dollars for data, but automating, simple things like rounds and readings, right? Instead of the days of a technician operator going around with a clipboard and piece of paper that no one ever looked at again after they shoved it and scanned it and uploaded it. Now it goes to a database and we trend data, right? And most of the points that we're looking at are not the things that are in our BMS, right? Because they're already logged. But they could find other parameters in other situations prior to there being a problem. So it's the preemptive, that's why we do rounds and readings, right? Use all of your senses to make sure that customers' environments are safe and operating appropriately. So,
wow, I mean that was great. Customers and you, everyone's impacted here. So let's get into this proactive, reactive element of how you even look at this. Asset-based accounting, life cycle management. What are our goals in this? Dan, can I turn it to you on this one, sir? Is that okay?
Of course. And as I've progressed in my career, this category, this topic here is one that's near and dear to my heart as I move more from the day-to-day to the operational business, broader view is, and we've obviously partnered with Stuart and MCIM on this journey. And so asset-based accounting was one of our primary focuses when we made the transition. So how do we we need the data from cost data, operational data to allow us to understand how our assets are performing, right? And all this stuff does have a correlation tie back to the customer base, of course. So without knowing how much we're spending and how many failures, how much we're spending on maintenance and either proactive and reactive, we're kind of in the dark, right? It's a lot of platitudes and assumptions or feelings, which, obviously in this world that we're in, we can't make decisions based on feelings, right? Data is what drives those decisions. And that asset-based accounting is the basis for a strong, effective life cycle asset management tool, right? So just because, and I'll get into some examples, just because an asset hits, and I love my OEMs out there, so this is not a jab, but because OEM said that a piece of equipment has a 15-year end of life expectation, right? Doesn't mean at 15 years you replace it wholesale. What it means in this world, now with the data world, we take that input, hey, we're heading towards that 15 years. What has our spend been? How many breakdowns or repairs have we had to do? And we look at that and we use multiple inputs to make an informed decision about how we spend our capital. And obviously the asset-based accounting, the lifecycle asset tool will also show you that 15-year asset failed in 5 years. And based on the number of failures and the spend that's hitting your OpEx, we need to invest and use some CapEx to replace that piece of equipment, because it's the smart business decision, but ultimately it's also the best decision for our customers, that we always are in front of mind, that we have all of our active equipment operationally ready and meeting all the redundancy requirements that we do.
We're going to come back to Dan, to you in a moment on this one in terms of what you're looking at. But Stuart, I've got to ask you now this the exact same one: asset-based accounting, lifecycle management, overwhelming amounts of data, but everyone's got a different business model almost. How do you deal with all that? And how do you get what Dan was just talking about? What's the best data for that value to get back to make informed decisions was the perfect thing that Dan said.
It was, and his comments are not uncommon at all, Stephen, right? We talked about number one being automating your business process. Number two is automating your monitoring and deciding exactly what you're monitoring on an asset level, right? Dan hit this in spades, and we've all heard what gets measured gets managed, right? So from that big wealth of data that we just talked about that you're drowning in, you must distill what the cost impacts are. And you've got to do that at an asset level, to Dan's point. This is a 20-year problem for most infrastructure assets, right? To Dan's point, there is so much front-end intellectual work that goes on design, that goes into equipment selection, right? And that locks in, right, your capital costs for these assets at outlay. But then the whole other side of the equation, right, in total cost of ownership is expense management. How is that maintained? How is it repaired? You have to be able to do that, not just at an asset level, you have to be able to do that at a classification level. And if you're really good, you can do that at a model level, right? This allows Dan to make really smart decisions around stuff like battery replacements, right? Am I shifting to a new battery technology like lithium over something like VRLA? And when he's got the data to do that, right, over, excuse me, a certain period of time, again, that puts trust in his customers that when I shift to this technology, you're going to see the benefit in cost, but you're not going to see a reduction in the risk mitigation that I provide, right? The redundancy is still there, and I've got the data to prove it, right? So you've got to be measuring this. If you don't, you are flying blind when it comes to capital management, right? Replacement cycles, things like that. Pardon me, the last example I'll bring up, because I've been through this decision with Dan a couple times, is insourcing versus outsourcing, right? He's got extremely capable technicians. They know these plants like the back of their hands, but it is a financial decision that he has to know what the capability of the market is, right? What are my OEMs providing? How can I blend that with a support package? And how do I measure that against what my guys can do, right? You have to have a clear lens into that. And that starts with asset-based accounting, to Dan's point.
I got to ask to you, Stuart, how do you get to that TCO thinking? You said it. What gets measured gets managed. What should we be monitoring? You're looking at a lot of major companies. Then I'm going to ask Dan the same question. First of all, how do I get there to TCO? What should I be monitoring and measuring? But to you, Stuart, please, what should we be monitoring to get to that TCO?
Sure. So this is a really good question because I think it has two parts, right? A good example is wanting to get to predictive maintenance, right? That's a big way to affect your TCO. Predictive maintenance is not a prescriptive approach, right? There are certain things that you do measure, like transformer oil, right, as part of a predictive maintenance package. But the whole other side of the equation is looking at your data and deciding what to manage. This is why we have new titles like data scientists that are appearing on data center teams, right? These people look at the noise. They are trained to help distill patterns, to help distill correlations, right? We start looking at things like, what is my failure rate after I do an intrusive maintenance? Is there a change in failure rates after I shut this equipment down and up and down for a prescriptive maintenance? That is something that you have to have somebody looking at in addition to the normal prescriptive things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And by the way, thanks for bringing up data scientists and giving us all heart attack. They find them. Okay. It's like finding I'm looking for a cloud engineer. What? So I got to ask you, Dan, I mean, how do you even manage space, power, time, cost to deliver, client requirements? Wow, there's so much to unpack here. I'm just leaving it to you, Dan, please. To you.
No, yeah, I like to get to that. I just want to touch on one thing that Stuart said, TCO, just follow up that conversation a bit, Stephen. So TCO is an important metric because it is what our OEMs provide to us when we make those purchasing decisions. And in my conversations with those folks, they very rarely get any positive feedback, right? It's just like everyone, it's always the negative feedback, but it's also in most cases platitudinal, right? It's feeling, it's sense, it's we think, we feel. TCO is factual data, right? So if they had a TCO over X number of years and we can bring data to them, not only just the negative data, the positive data. Oh, wow, we estimated that their failure rate would be X and the cost would be Y. And then our data shows them that it was much better than that, right? That's a valuable full circle of the relationship, right? So just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. But as far as space power, that is a key thing that I think, again, that the data really helps us manage more effectively. In this world now, in these days, customers, while they are looking to expand in some situations as they consolidate and their locations is a big movement right now, they also want to densify what they currently have as far as space. And as we all know, all the different technologies that are coming out regarding densification and liquid cooling, so that within a typical co-lo location, you know, the air cooling can only do so much, right? So technologies are advancing so that we can extend the life of these co-location data centers that are typically air cooled, historically air cooled, by doing some liquid cooling technology, leveraging liquid cooling technologies to help our customers leverage their existing space and densify. I'm working with a customer right now to really help them along that journey. They have the space that they need. They don't need more space. They just want to swap out those, 15 kW racks for 35 to 50. And that's the evolution that we're seeing as well. So where I'm going with that is, that's great, but do I have the cooling capacity, the chiller capacity, the power? Where's my power? Then, not only that, how is that going to affect their neighbor, right? We have to be Mr. Rogers right here. We have to be, everyone has to be a good neighbor, right? And so we have to balance that effect of, if we let this customer X increase their density within their space, within the entire, property, that drains other resources. Do we have those adequate resources to allow that without impacting someone else? And that's ultimately what an operational team does, right? We manage all those parameters to make sure all customers are treated equal, and don't have any negative impacts from their neighbors. So data allows us to make those informed decisions. So that will just on that one.
Absolutely perfect. Stuart, I got to bring it to you.
Yeah.
And by the way, Stuart, I see you nodding, so help me
I
here.
barely,
but go.
I could barely contain myself, Stephen, because he hit the third point, right? Getting back to our original question, how do you turn this into a cost center? It's data-driven decision-making. And Dan, like Dan just said, that is not internal. That's not just an operator game between me and the OEMs and my maintenance teams. That extends to customers. That is the level it takes to get competitive in this world. Things like power reports, density reports, smart hands requests. Can you put in a cross connect for me? Customers are going through these decisions daily, right, in their world. Do I go hyperscale? Do I have enough on a co-location environment? What if I put in some type of containment solution? How's that going to impact my neighbors? Once you solve automating your data pipelines, once you solve automating what you're monitoring, you can make data-driven decisions internally, and you let your customers do the same, right? So that pipeline extends to your customers, to Dan's customers through his portal. They're able to see what his team's capable of, what their solutions are in the market. And that's really when the magic happens, right? When you get to data-driven decision-making and enabling that for your customers. It's a big price of entry to get to that point, but then you get these exponential gains in what their options are, right? And how quickly they can make these decisions. So it's great to see a customer get there. It's not easy. It takes a lot of foundational work, but it's worth it, is the point, right? And TCO is one of the great ways you can prove that it's working.
So, Stuart, I've got to ask about, to Dan's point, of layers of cost, layers of efficiency, layers of need. Like he was bringing up a great example of a customer who's moving from air to more densification. So how do you deal with this layers of requirements? Because every customer has a different point of view, I guess, to say.
Yeah, I think we hit upon it earlier, but you've got to give them this time sense of the data, right? The customers are going to judge how this impacts their deployment in real time. Rarely do I see a customer, Dan, you can chime in if different, completely shift from air cooling to immersion cooling. It doesn't just happen in the click of the fingers. They need to build trust in that technology. They need to build trust in the partner that can operate and maintain that technology. So they do it in a sample size. They incrementally move into it once they see the data that confirms what their assumptions were. And if they don't get that from a partner, they're going to find someone that does. Right. So to the earlier points, you've got to be looking at the data on your team, and you've got to be thinking about ways, how can I pipeline this efficiently to my customers to let them make the decisions they need to make.
Right.
Dan,
To your point, Stuart, they don't just jump in with both feet, right? They do the due diligence and do pilots, and that's one of the customers that I'm working with now, doing a pilot, verifying that the technology works and that all the things that they were sold from their hardware vendors all function the way that they had committed to. But yeah, no, and that's key, right? And then even throughout that pilot, it's going to be that data sharing of, everything that we had anticipated and forecasted, occurred as designed, as planned.
fantastic. I mean, it's so true. It's incredibly true. Let me actually jump to this next point. Dan, you set this up so good. I need to send you a check. Like Dan was saying, it's a shared environment. I got customers, there's shared issues, but there's also Dan's issues, the CyrusOne, the operators issues. And I'm going to throw it to you, Dan. Shared environment, shared issues you're dealing with every day around the world. Are customers constantly changing this shared environment, the shared issue? Because you just said it's got to be customer focused, but also an intersection of business, customer requirements, SLAs. Wow, there's a lot there.
No, it is a complicated world. Every customer, within a shared environment, there may be multiple SLA levels, right? So you have to manage to the lowest common denominator and go with the lowest threshold so that everyone, in that case, some others get the benefits of that. So some of the things that we have to do to make sure that we are, good neighbors again, and is leverage our BMS data, our EPMS data, to highlight issues within customer environments. Hey, are you on your rack receptacles? Are you 60 amp receptacles, but each of them are pulling 35 amps? Guess what? There's no failover capacity. You're going to shut down, right? So we got to alert them. We got to take that data and help them, inform them and alert them. Hey, you're trending towards a point where if something were to fail, if you were to have power supply fail or some component failure, it's going to have an impact on you. Not only that, if they're overutilizing, right, and there is that fail, does that now have an upstream impact of a failure within, say, an RPP, and the daisy effect that maybe goes out and potentially affects all the customers? So we have to protect not only the customer primarily focus, that's our primary focus, but also everyone that's associated to the data center around them. And so we also, again, look at, again, in those situations where they may have some failures with their environments, we have 0 amp alarms, right? If they're running along at 15 amps and all of a sudden it goes to 0, was there a problem, right? And so we proactively ask them, because again, we're the landlord, right? We're just there monitoring and trying to help and keeping everyone, everything operating as designed. And we don't always know what's going on in everyone's environments. And so that's why we're proactively alerting them to situational changes that we see, to ensure that they don't have broader impacts within their applications and their systems.
I like that, Dan. You're not just the landlord. You're an absolutely wonderful partner and a great friend to every industry because of what you guys do at CyrusOne to help out. So, Stuart, can I turn it to you for a moment before I come back to Dan? And that's, shared environment, shared issues. And I like the way that Dan put it, because there's impact upstream, downstream, to the guy next to you. There's impact everywhere. How do you deal with this? Dan's dealing with so many issues at the same time. I'm surprised he still looks so young.
Amen to that. And I cannot overemphasize how intense those issues can become day to day, right? Having worked on white space floors, things like failover reporting, right? Giving customers a heads up, you're approaching your limits. Hey, you are under densified, right? Maybe perhaps the traffic that you estimated would be seen is not here. That is a day-to-day game, right? It evolves quickly. Customers rack and stack all the time, right? So you have to be on top of that game. Another interesting point, though, where I've seen Dan work some of his magic, but it's a necessity in this game, is you're not just a landlord, you're also a mayor, right? And when a new technology comes out, right? Hey, if I'm able to shift to a new catcher design on UPS, right, that is going to allow me to enable a lower cost for you as a customer in a co-location environment, that takes consensus, to Dan's point. He's got to get every single customer in that space to agree, which could be 100 different customers, right? And that is a challenging problem. And if you don't have the data to prove that, you're not going to get everybody convinced, right? So that is a critical part of what Dan does. Having your customers also have access to that same real-time data allows him to bring consensus to colo environments, which is difficult to do. It's key to unlocking some of those efficiencies there.
I'm sorry, sir. I have a question, and this is a big one from the industry also, is you're talking about unlocking value, but so many customers are just looking to Dan for help. Dan, give me everything. Dan, help me on this, all this. I got to ask, short-term, long-term solutions, isn't it both playing together? Isn't it the wonderful folks at Cyrus One and Dan helping all their customers? So it's a joint venture. I've got to tell them what's happening. They've got to tell me. How do we deal with this long and short-term issue of working together?
You hit the nail on the head, Stephen, and that's why I use mayor for lack of a better word, right? Dan is at the middle of that continuous push from his customers to get more efficient, but to remain safe. They're all going to have different strategies to do that, and they intersect on the white space floor, right? So someone's got to be in the middle to mediate that. And good mayors like Dan do that very transparently with their data. Right? People can see the impacts in real time of what he's saying when he implements a new strategy, right? Like, I'm going to raise temperatures in the white space floor in accordance with ASHRAE, and what everybody agrees, they can see that there's no impact in real time because he gives them a lens into that world in real time, right? In their portal. So things like that really make a difference in how quickly you can evolve.
I got to ask you, Stuart, I'm sorry. How the customer's trying to reduce problems, they're trying to reduce risk and increase efficiency. Dan's trying to do the exact same thing. So how do you operationalize this when no one's ready? Or you find a customer that's not ready, or they're overwhelmed with the amount of data?
It's a fair question, Stephen. I think it goes back to what you said. It's showing them that the answers are there. They're just stranded in some black box in some database somewhere, right? And that's the data we need to unlock, right? That stranded value is somewhere there. It's not some miracle sauce that a software has, move your server to this position, right? It's data they already have, and it's lining up the trajectory in the pipeline so we can get the right data to the right decision maker to make that call.
And I'm going to ask you, Stuart, from MCIM's perspective, you're dealing with a lot of different customers requiring different data points. Is that something that can be done to support the customer?
100% it is. The key to it, like we said, is you've got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, the data is going to manage you, right? So it's better to be much more proactive in that space and manage the data. Your technicians will drown in it. You will see SLAs drop, right? But if you have an approach to this, right, where here are my key data points, like we said, going back to the beginning, right? I'm going to automate business process to exchange data between all these stakeholders quickly, right? That way I don't have data stuck in boxes, stuck in a slow transmission time. I've automated this business process. Second thing is I'm going to start looking on what I should be measuring, right? What is important to measure? That's what I'm going to manage. You distill and find agreement around those things, right? And then lastly, you frame that up in a dashboard, in a report, in an alert, and you let people make data-driven decisions. The software doesn't ultimately make those decisions. It's people with access to the right data in the right role. In some cases, that's an executive making a capital plan decision that I should replace these chillers at 18 years instead of the rated 24. In other cases, it is a technician on the floor who is taking rounds, to Dan's point, and he sees that I am trending high on chiller temp, and I don't know why. My mobile device is telling me this. I'm going to go investigate, and that prevents an incident to every customer on the floor, right? So everybody needs access to the right data. It's not just customers. It's not just executives. It's technicians, maintenance teams, OEM providers, right? All of that needs to be lined up in your data strategy, and you need a platform to do that on.
Absolutely fantastic. Wow. Good thing you're around, Dan. So Dan, I'm sorry. I'm going to hand it back to you, Dan. Thoughts on this shared environment. Are customers constantly changing their requirements? There's so much new technology coming in.
Well, and it kind of goes back to I guess you want to keep playing the mayor topic, is it's that open communication, right? It's that constant communication between the business and the customers, right? Where are they headed? What are their concerns and issues today within, not necessarily within their environment, but in their business, and how can we, work together to meet those new goals, right? So as hey, we want to go to the cloud, you have on-ramps to the cloud, hey, we want to densify, do you have any experience with these technologies? Hey, we want, so it's those conversations with the customers that occur often, that keep us informed, and then it challenges us to go out and really investigate these new technologies, investigate these new situations and then go leverage some of the industry folks to understand how they've managed through some of these changes. So it's that open communication, collaboration, and transparency that ultimately is how we keep the neighborhood functioning and everyone ultimately happy within the environment. So.
Happy. And what a tough one. Stuart, to you.
Yeah, and not to cut you off, Stephen, I know that's dangerous, but to make it real, I've seen like a good example, I think, is what a lot of operators are worried about: stranded capacity, right? Okay. We've all heard this term. My A&E firm definitely didn't design my white space to have stranded capacity, right? It doesn't intentionally happen, right? But where I've seen it solved best, it is a consensus issue among customers, right? It's one that's managed over time. This customer deployed with this technology, with this expectation, and it didn't work out that way, right? They're not taking full advantage of what they originally got, and some other co-location customer in the same space is now suffering because they want to expand, right? But if you have a good mayor in the middle of that can relay, hey, with each customer, how are you executing on your vision? Are you meeting your metrics? Are you using what you need? Could you perhaps scale back, right? Because this is all you need, and we've got the data to prove it. And that allows Dan to then lend that stranded capacity to another customer, right? We see it in contiguous space problems, moving people around the data centers. Having a good partner, a good mayor in the middle of that has that relationship with all the customers is how you prevent stranded capacity from happening.
And that's an important one, Stuart. One that we've discussed, you and I, is how do we present that to? So let's talk about our sales team, right? How do we alert them to what power and space are available within a data hall, within a building, within a campus, in a region, so that customers, either new logos or existing, which the bulk of our growth is with our existing customer base, they know that, hey, well, there's 5,000 square feet in that hall, but there's 3,000 here, 2,000 here. They're not contiguous, right? There's 750 kW available in that data hall, but it's on this side of the hall and that side also. How do we so it's the data, it's the management of the entire space and power parameters to understand, how we can leverage what's available to meet the customer needs. And again, that's expansion of existing customers, expansion of existing cages in some cases as well as new customers coming in.
Yeah, and Stephen, if I could just maybe zoom out on that one, because Dan, that's why I like working with Dan. He brings in good points like this, where I mean, what we're talking about there is hundreds of customers on a white space, throwing data somewhere, technicians throwing data somewhere, and having Dan's sales team taking that data to new customers. He's bringing that to the front of his value prop, right? That's the value of doing it right, right? That's not easy, but that's what I would call having a complete plan around how I'm going to manage my data and empower every part of my business. But that's just cool stuff.
Stuart, can I ask you a question in terms of, and this has come in a lot from folks about our topic today, is this concept of self-service. More and more people think that I should have access to everything. I should have self-service. I should be able to make changes. Dan, you don't need to know. Although Cyrus One is this incredible company that manages everything, it knows everything, I should be self-service. How do you deal with this self-service mentality when you've got to have this collaborative relationship? Is it becoming an issue? And are you finding more players asking for more, and they just get overwhelmed?
I think it's a double-edged sword, Stephen, to be honest. It is definitely valuable, right? All customers want to self-service more, is what I've seen. They want access to data. They are just as thirsty. They want the transparency. So it's an easy sell to a customer to say, hey, I have more self-service options for you. The double-edged sword part of it is, how do I distill everything I can do from a data perspective into something they can understand? Right, that is very challenging, right? I think Dan touched on it earlier. In a shared environment in a colo, I have thousands of branch circuits, right, that roll up to a common set of shared UPS systems, that roll up to a common set of shared switchboards, that roll up to a common set of shared batteries, transformers, you name it, right? And being able to navigate that data stream, right, across all of your infrastructure assets, that is a challenging problem. Right? When done right, it can give those customers a lot of self-service options, right? The failover reports we just talked about can be automated, temperatures, impacts of maintenance, giving your customer, hey, here's my 52-week ahead of time plan for maintenance and planned impacts so that you can plan your freeze periods, your busy times around it. That can be done, right? And customers love it, but that is not an easy data science exercise. Right? It's not just a data science exercise, it's a people exercise. People have decisions that they have to make in that process of when they're going to schedule stuff, plan impacts. And I guess to cut to the chase, it is definitely worth doing. It's a double-edged sword. So you have to have a specific tool that will help you do this. Right? Again, you will drown in data, candidly, if you're still trying to make decisions like this in email, right? Or Excel, right? You need something beyond that, right? That is a little bit more smart, that's going to allow you to pipeline all that data in so customers can self-serve on what they need, because they're all going to have different needs.
Good one. Okay, I'm being told we're running out of time, so I want to get to this last point. This is where I'm just opening it up to you guys. I mean, data as a resource, key takeaways, folks. What do people need to know when working with you? What do people need to know? How to get data as a resource and make it from cost to profitability. But at the end of the day, you're saying to me, data is king. How do I get there? And I love right at the beginning, you're talking about a data scientist. I mean, how do we even get these new skill sets? How do we get these new people? What are we into kidnapping now? So I'm going to turn it to you, Dan, first, please. This is any way you want, sir, to your points.
Right, and Stephen, thank you for that. And one of the things I think in the first topic that I wanted to circle back to, customers need, and again, as the evolution has occurred of data center operations and customer needs, right? Smart hands right? Self-serve. We talk a little leverage the self-serve. They don't want to have to call 5 people and send emails. They want to just upgrade their rack power. It's through a portal. They want to run a cross connect. It's through a portal. They want to request additional services. It's through a portal. And so that's how, again, we can leverage the existing staff to provide a service for the customers, right? So not only are these folks just going around turning wrench turners, right? They can also we make sure there's the skill sets are there and appropriate, but they can then go ahead and start really helping customers in their environment. So think about from a customer view, it's 3 a.m. on a Saturday. Obviously, they don't have resources there. I'd say the small and middle-sized companies don't have resources on site 24/7, 365. That's where we come in. Trained folks can respond, check a cross connect, reboot a server, swap out a drive, all these services that quite honestly, from a customer's view, helps augment their staffing, right? If we're daily, doing tape swap management, if we're daily, or on whatever frequency escorting vendors for them, they don't need to have staff on site on-prem in different regions throughout the year. They can leverage our skilled staff to help run their environments. And I think that's a key thing about, the original topic, if we were to go back to it, right? Making, as a instead of just a cost center, right? It's a profit center. Now, obviously, it's a balance, right? Yeah, it's a profit center for us, but truly, it's in some ways, it's a, I don't say profit center, but the lack of OpEx spend for the customers, right? They don't have to have potentially as many resources to do all these day-to-day, weekly tasks, et cetera. They can let, providers like CyrusOne provide that service.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, you're really talking about leveraging so many things and augmenting it. And yeah, by the way, it's a profit center because if you're saving somebody money, that's fantastic. And the new skill sets. But I love this because CyrusOne truly is that great partner of all the business players because you're in it together. Stuart, I got to hand it over to you because Dan started this with the word evolution. I don't know if it's an evolution or a revolution.
That's fair. And Dan brings up a prime example, I think, Stephen, where it can be both, right? To his point, if he can provide a service at a lower cost so that the customer saves money and he makes it, that's a win-win. That is possible when you treat data as a resource. So I'm really inspired because to your earlier point, what is a data scientist? We've certainly got some of those people on our team that were educated that way, but I'm really inspired in data centers, particularly because I've seen a 21-year-old high school graduate operate a 3-phase UPS at 450 volts, right? And data scientists are already on your team. They're your operators, they're your maintenance mappers. I've seen people turn into this once you give them the tools to make the right decisions, right? It is something that I think you already have on your team if you know it or not, right? People, especially good operators, I've seen them become data scientists once you empower them with the right tools to do it, right? They love saving customers money as much as Dan does, right? They are very prideful about this job. I've seen them shine, right? When they have made a good decision ahead of time, whether it's on a capital replacement, whether it's on a repair, because they had the right data to do it, right? So if you treat it as a resource, a common joke I'll make, right, is you look at something like a chiller, right? Just one, and look at the care we put into this, right? From equipment selection, from bidding, and then I maintain it over its life. I check on it. You should be doing the exact same thing with your data. Treat it as the same type of resource, right? From when you get it, what pipeline is it going through? How do I make sure it's accurate? Who is it going to, right? And a lot of people on your team already know how to do that. They're already data scientists. Just give them the tools, and then the rest happens.
They're already data scientists. I like that. Just give them the tools. You're absolutely right. I started as a third shift engineer and I wish I had all those tools.
That's
So let's go to final thoughts, guys, final key takeaways. And it's okay to say, please don't do this at home. Kindly come to CyrusOne and please come to MCIM as fast as possible because you don't want to do this. But final takeaway, guys, to you, Dan, please, sir.
Right, just to build on Stuart's point, the data is also from a broader business view, we have such quality data now. We are able, then I go back to the informed decisions. It's paramount for businesses to survive and to grow and prosper, to have the data to make informed decisions. So we're really diving into under the covers with data scientists, right? With these business intelligent tools to help guide us on that journey. So it's fascinating. Yeah, we have data lakes and data pools and data scientists, and I had never heard of any of these terms a couple of years ago. So it's fascinating to learn about this, but I guess that spawned from this growth of data, right? Growth of every sensor has data points, right? Every has data flowing from it, and how many sensors are there, and how many pieces of equipment. And so it's exciting to work with those folks, especially on Stuart's team. Some fascinating folks over there that just you kind of give them a vision, and they go off and they come back with the data and show you how it can look and slice and dice it. So that's exciting to see. I guess the key thing is data is allowing us to really focus on our customers, have transparent operations, which thereby have improved experience and improved performance. And that kind of wraps up my perspective on just data as a resource.
Fantastic. Stuart, to you, final thoughts, please, sir. And also, again, I've got to say to MCIM and to Fulcrum Collaborations, you guys are actually wonderful both in this. Great conversation, sir.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Dan. I'll end it pretty simply. This is the tippy point of the spear, right? It's everybody struggling with this problem. Data centers are exploding. We all know that, right? I mean, the estimates of where we're going to be in 10 years from now kind of boggle my mind. And solving the data problem is going to be part of that. Everybody's dealing with it. Reach out. We'd love to chat about this problem. And reach out to Dan, right? If you need co-location space and you want a smart player, reach out, talk to us. We'd love to talk about this type of problem because we're all going to be dealing with it for the next decade.
And longer than a decade. Thank you to both of you, Dan and Stuart. Thank you both very much for your time. Wow, it's incredibly valuable and what great information. Appreciation to both of you.
This is a pleasure. Cheers.
Appreciate it.
All right, fantastic. And with that, I've got to say we're finished with this discussion, but please reach out to Cyrus One and reach out to MCIM. They're there to help you. They're there to be your partner and really help you understand what you're doing right and wrong. I love that.